Ladies and gentlemen, Psalms 4 says, "Hear me when I call, O God of my righteousness. You have enlarged me when I was in distress. Have mercy upon me and hear my prayer." And my prayer today is for the people who have suffered much loss and for people who are still in dire need of help, medically and otherwise, who are victims of Hurricane Irma. As you know, it has done a lot of damage in the Caribbean, and also it's done a lot of damage in Florida. So let's pray for those people, and where we can help them, let's help them. And for those people who are fortunate enough not to suffer the extreme amounts of damage from the hurricane, and also no extreme damage to their health or life, we thank God for their protection. All right, let's get into boxing. We're going to talk about the current champions today, the ones who are basically the ones at the top of the food chain, who now have to determine whether they want to stay there or how they performing and what they look like. So let's first start off with the heavyweight division, and we look at Anthony Joshua. He is the creme de la creme in the group of guys there. You notice all of them are undefeated when we look at the heavyweight champions, whether it's Tyson Fury, Joseph Parker, Deontay Wilder, or Anthony Joshua. But Anthony Joshua definitely is at the top of the pack. He has the least amount of fights, but yet he's faced the stiffest competition so far. Deontay Wilder is the next in lineup because Deontay Wilder faced Bermane Stavern to win the championship from him, the WBC belt. And what's good about this is Deontay Wilder will be facing Luis Ortiz next, I do believe is the guy's name. And that is an absolutely fantastic matchup. That's a fantastic matchup, and I hope to see how he performs against Luis Ortiz, or if Luis Ortiz beats him. That's a good, solid matchup in which Deontay Wilder will be tested yet again. And that will put Deontay Wilder ahead of Anthony Joshua, because Anthony Joshua will be facing Pulev, who I just don't personally think is in the category of Anthony Joshua. But when we talk about abilities and skills and who these guys have faced, Anthony Joshua's at the top of the heap right now. He's faced Vladimir Klitschko, arguably one of the all-time great heavyweights because of his long standing and the amount of wins he's had and the way he's beaten opponents. Of course, where we actually place him in the all-time greats, that's another story, but he's arguably one of them. And so Anthony Joshua's been able to fight him and also beat him in a very competitive match, by the way. So he's at the top of the pack, and then we have Deontay Wilder next. Tyson Fury did also beat Vladimir Klitschko, but the asterisk on his win, which is why I don't think he's going to come back into the sport of boxing, period, and I think he's going to just leave on that high, and that's it, is that he's known to have abused cocaine. And maybe that's also what influenced his incredible reflexes in that fight against Klitschko, why such a big man like that could move so fast. And I don't like cheats. I really don't. So it's better if he stays away from the sport of boxing, even though he did have a personality that was good for the sport of boxing. Unfortunately, cheating that's not cool. Now his relative is going to face Joseph Parker, and Joseph Parker is one of those quiet ones that you can pay attention to. He comes from New Zealand, and he's right now the WBO champion. So this is a lovely mix of undefeated heavyweight champions we have, and this really brews really well for the heavyweight division, not to mention those who are not even champions yet. And we have some really good skilled fighters coming up that makes the heavyweight division one of the most exciting divisions out there. When we talk the fighter with the most personality currently as world champion, we're talking Deontay Wilder. When we're talking about personalities fighters who have done quite a lot and accomplished the most, Anthony Joshua's the guy. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this all pans out and how eventually the division shapes up. But it looks really promising. When we look at the cruiserweight division, we have some guys who've been there for a long time. Denis Lebedev has been a long reigning cruiserweight champion, whether he's been WBA or IBF or whatever. He's lost a couple fights, but Denis Lebedev is definitely one of those guys who's sort of established himself as a cruiserweight champion. Now, recently, Alexander Usyk was able to beat Marco Huck to get the WBO championship. Marco Huck being also a cruiserweight champion once upon a time. And we have Murav Gassiev, and then we have Maris Brides. And again, we have a number of undefeated champions here. We even have a regular champion in Junior Dorticus. So we have a Cuban, we have a Latvian, a Russian, a Ukrainian. So this is very interesting. This makes for interesting shapings of how this division would pan out. It's nice to see a lot of undefeated champions because we know the mentality of an undefeated person is a little bit different to someone who has suffered a loss. So I like to see how this division pans out and actually works out. Of course, the most experienced champion there is Denis Lebedev. So that should be an interesting way how that division shapes out. When we look at light heavyweight, of course, the guy who's the king of that division right now is Andre Ward, even though the lineal champion is Adonis Stevenson. Badu Jack has just recently joined that division, having defeated one of the former WBA champions, actually. And so he's there. So, again, a very intriguing division. Of course, the guy that you really have to look at is Andre Ward in this division. But, again, I would love to see Ward versus Adonis Stevenson. I would love to see Badu Jack versus Adonis Stevenson. And, of course, that division has so many interesting fighters also that are not world champions. So it really is an exciting division to still stay in. And I hope Andre Ward kind of stays in the light heavyweight division for a little while longer. I'm hearing all this talk about him facing heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua, and I'm thinking that just does not make any sense to me at this present point in time, but maybe in the future that would be an interesting matchup. But I think that's a tall ask for Andre Ward, quite frankly. Even though he does have the defense, I just don't think that that would be something to just jump in and just do at this point in time. It just makes no sense to me, especially where there's Adonis Stevenson in the division of light heavyweight. I know it may be difficult to make, but still it's an interesting prospect for him to at least face Adonis Stevenson. I mean, I'm just saying, I don't know. When you look at the super middleweight division, it has been reshaped and resculpted. So we're looking at James DeGale as the IBF champion. We have David Benavidez, just recently beat Ronald Gavril to become the WBC champion there. And we have Gilberto Ramirez from the WBO. So it's really interesting. Again, a lot of young, skilled talent out there. We got George Groves, who he finally became the WBA champion. You got the regular champion, which is Tyron Zouj, who I don't know anything about. So we have a number, again, of undefeated world champions. Okay? We have Gilberto Ramirez. We've got David Benavidez. And we have Tyron Zouj. So it's intriguing, these young champions that have just come up on the scene. And also it's intriguing seeing the older champions and just having that mix mash. It's very exciting to think about. And these are just the champions, of course, in the super middleweight division. We also have one or two, not a whole lot, but one or two exciting guys that could really make a difference in that division. And we have one or two big names there as well. In the middleweight division, we have Gennady Golovkin, who is the man in that division. Okay, Saul Canelo Alvarez is he's the lineal champion, but we see that time and time again, we see the lineal champion is not really the man of the division. Okay, the man of the division is somebody else, and that's just telling you that being a lineal champion, yeah, you beat the dude, but it doesn't necessarily say that you're the man of the division. All right. Now, back in the day, they talk about the undisputed champion, and yes, the undisputed champion was the man of the division, but again, I don't put too much weight on undisputed champion, even though it's a huge accomplishment today because you have to get all 4 belts. But I'm not into belt collecting, to be honest with you. What I'm looking at is, did you beat another champion to get this thing? Or did you just beat one guy to get all 4 belts, you know? If you beat and you collected the belts from different people by beating them, you had to beat them, of course. You can't just collect the belt, because then you're just a belt collector, in my opinion. But if you beat different people to get these championship belts, which would say these people were champions, it's huge. It's big. And Gennady Golovkin did that. He beat the IBF champion to get the IBF belt. He did not beat the WBA champion to get the WBA belt, but he defended it against so many different people. You got to give him his props for that. And then now he's gotten the WBC belt. He kind of belt collected that. He didn't fight anybody to get it, but it is what it is. Now, He's the man of the division. Now, a new coming guy to the division who's become a WBA champion is now Hassan N'Dam. Now, it used to be Danny Jacobs, and so it's kind of weird to see that Danny Jacobs is not the champion anymore. But I guess by him facing Gennady Golovkin, I guess he gave up his belt to do that. I guess because he probably had a mandatory defense or something. So Hassan N'Dam, anyway, he is right now the regular champion. So he's new to becoming a world champion. He's actually a world champion now, which is great. And also, Billy Joe Saunders is the WBO champion. Of course, Saul Canelo Alvarez, who's going to be facing Gennady Golovkin, is the lineal champion. He beat Miguel Cotto to become that. So it's an exciting division. Still got guys in there that are very interesting. I don't know if Peter Quillen is still at middleweight or if he's at super middleweight. Depends. I don't know. I can't remember. But it's still an exciting division, and there's still some interesting people there to fight. So I would love to see Saunders mix it up with Golovkin. I would love to see Alvarez mix it up with Saunders, and I would love to see there's some guys like the Charlo, Jamal Charlo's in there, and a couple other interesting people. They have Willie Monroe and a couple other people, right? I think the same time Billy Joe Saunders will be facing Willie Monroe when Canelo's facing Gennady Golovkin, and that's almost all your belts. You know, Hassan N'Dam's the only guy who will not have some action, and you know, it'll be nice to just kind of go through those guys if possible. But if you beat the number one guy, that's okay as well. In the light middleweight division, the most experienced and the longest reigning champion there right now is Erislandy Lara. Okay, Demetrius Andre also pulled up a WBA belt, so he's a WBA champion again. So he's a champion once again. And then you got Jermell Charlo, who's there. He's going to be facing Erickson Lubin, I believe, in October. So that should be great. And I think Jarrett Hurd is facing... Who's Jarrett Hurd facing? He's facing somebody. Hurd versus... oh, yes. He's facing Austin Trout. So I think Jarrett Hurd is facing Austin... Is it Austin Trout? Is it Austin Trout versus Jarrett Hurd? I can't remember who he's facing. But I think it's Trout versus Hurd. I think so. So that should be a good fight. And then you have Miguel Cotto, who has become WBO champion. So we got a nice little mix here, and Miguel Cotto looks like he's going to be boxing. He's going to be boxing on for a little bit while longer. So an interesting division. And again, we have some undefeated champions. We have Demetrius Andre, we have Jermell Charlo, we have Jarrett Hurd in there. All right, so I mean, these are good fights. Okay, you even got an Argentinian boxer who's in there, but he's an interim champion, so we don't talk too much about him. Now in the welterweight division, again, a very interesting division, very dynamic. You're looking at Keith Thurman right now is the man in the division. All right. Some people argue Errol Spence is the man, but I think Keith Thurman is the dude still. So Keith Thurman, he beat Danny Garcia, but you also got Lamont Peterson, who's in there. He's the regular WBA champion. You also got Errol Spence Jr., who is people believe is the second coming. He's the dude to take over welterweight because he had a fantastic win over the British boxer Kell Brook. Okay, and then we got Jeff Horn, who just popped up on the scene. He's also an undefeated fighter, and he beat Manny Pacquiao. So we got some incredible guys fighting some legendary fighters. We got Jeff Horn, who beat a legendary fighter in Pacquiao. We have Errol Spence, who beat Kell Brook, of all people. And we got Keith Thurman, who beat Danny Garcia, who was undefeated as well. So we had just some remarkable undefeated champions here. And I'm looking forward to seeing how they mix and match with one another. Of course, Lamont Peterson, I'll be interested in seeing who he faces as well. So this is a really interesting mix of boxers in this particular division. Of course, in the light welterweight division, it's swept. We have the undisputed welterweight champion in Terrence Crawford. He swept all the belts, and he is a guy of promise. I don't know if he's staying in light welterweight for a little while longer, do a couple defenses, and then move up. But it looks like Terrence Crawford is almost done with light welterweight. So that should be interesting. Then we have the lightweight division. And in the lightweight division, of course, the guy of the division is Jorge Linares. He's both lineal champion and he's both the man of the division. He's a WBA champion. Mikey Garcia recently became WBC world champion. Robert Easter's been world champion for a little bit now. And Terry Flanagan is also WBO world champion. And what you notice again about these interesting guys, the more experienced guy, he's got some losses. But again, we got some guys again with no losses on their record. And it'll be lovely to just watch the mix and match. I hope that Mikey Garcia faces these are the guys here in this lightweight division. Looking forward to it. In the super featherweight division, though, Vasily Lomachenko is registered as a super featherweight. He's actually in the lightweight division, so he shows a lot of promise. He's going to be coming down in weight, actually, to face Guillermo Rigondeaux at, I believe it's 129 pounds, which is a lot. It's a tall ask for Guillermo Rigondeaux, but I think Rigondeaux can handle it. But it's still a nice matchup. Now, this division is not as exciting as the other divisions. The super featherweight division. It's actually kind of devoid of really known fighters or anything. We got Jezreel Corrales and we got Miguel Berchet from Mexico, the WBA and WBC champions respectively, and we have Vasily Lomachenko, who's the WBO champion at present. So that's the super featherweight division. However, in the featherweight division, it's very exciting. We have Leo Santa Cruz there, we have Abner Maris, we have Gary Russell Jr., we have Lee Selby, and we have Oscar Valdez. Of all of them, the only fighter who has not had a loss in his resume is Oscar Valdez. He's the youngest of them all. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how these guys mix and match. I can't wait to see what happens. These are the premier guys of the division. Featherweight division is in good hands. When we look at the super bantamweight division, the man still running that division is Guillermo Rigondeaux. He won back a championship. He's still super champion. Below him is a guy called Daniel Roman. He's also undefeated, by the way. Then we have Ray Vargas. He is from Mexico. We have Yukinori Oguna from Japan. And then we have Jesse Magdaleno from the United States. And I'll pay big money to see Jesse Magdaleno face Guillermo Rigondeaux. And Magdaleno wants to fight Guillermo Rigondeaux. I would love to see that fight. I think that's a great fight. But Rigo's going to be probably facing Vasily Lomachenko, so we'll have to look out for that and see how things go. There's also another undefeated fighter in Moises Flores. He's an interim champion from Mexico. Of course, either one of these guys, maybe Magdaleno or somebody else, could face that guy. Maybe Rigo, Magdaleno, it doesn't matter. But it's not a big money fight. In the bantamweight division, which not a whole lot of people know about, there's Zolini Tate from South Africa. He's the WBO champion. Hits pretty hard. That's the guy really that you want to look at in the bantamweight division. Even though Luis Neri, he is the lineal champion. He's undefeated. We also have Zanat Zakiyanov from Kazakhstan. We have Jamie Mcdonald. You know him from the United Kingdom. He actually won a title, which was pretty good for him. I think he faced that Japanese fighter. I forgot his name right now. You guys know him. He's one of two brothers. And he won that bantamweight title. I think he did the rematch, and he commandingly won that one. So he's bona fide. So it'd be nice to see, say, for instance, Zolini Tate face him. There's Ryan Barnett, also of the UK Kingdom. He has the IBF title. He's undefeated as well. And that's about it. You know, Luis Neri, he's the WBC champion. So we got two undefeated champions up in here. And then we got some seasoned guys. So I'm looking forward to just seeing them mix and match with one another eventually. It may not happen immediately, but, you know, mix and match. We also have in the super flyweight division, which is not really well known. We have Nyle Ichiyama, who is the dude right now. Of course, yes, Srisaket Rongvisai from Thailand. And he just beat Roman Gonzalez twice, just proving that he can beat his tail. So he's pretty much at the top of the food chain. We have Nyle Ichiyama. We have Srisaket Rongvisai. Okay. Then we have Khalid Yafai, and we have Jerwin Ancajas from the Philippines. Got two undefeated fighters, Nyle Ichiyama and Khalid Yafai. So that's an interesting division. I will not lie to you. We have also Carlos Cuadras, and we have what's his name? Juan Francisco Estrada, which is up in that division as well. In the flyweight division, we have Kazuto Ioka from Japan. He's been reigning for a pretty long time. Of course, Donnie Nietes, the IBF champion. We have Daigo Higa, and we have Shu Kimura, the WBC and WBO champions. Quite frankly, my boy is still Donnie Nietes. I love him a lot. Kazuto Ioka is a pretty good Japanese fighter from what I've seen. So I would like to see Nietes face Ioka at some point in time. I don't know if that'll ever happen. Nietes is almost at the end of his road, I think. In the light flyweight division, or super minimum weight, you have Ryoichi Taguchi. He's been around for a while, WBA on and off. He'd win it, he'd lose it, he'd win it, he'd lose it. Then you got Ken Shiro from Japan. He's the WBC champion. You have Milen Melido from the Philippines, and you have Rosai Tanaka from Japan. So these are the little guys. We got 2 undefeated little guys in there. And then in the minimum weight division, we have Thamanun Neomtrung from Thailand. That's the WBA champion. He's undefeated at present. You have Kayafon Munsri from Thailand. He's 47-0-0-0. He's the WBC champion alright presently. That's pretty impressive for a little guy. Been champion for almost 3 years now. And then you have Hiroto Kayoguchi from Japan. He's recently become champion. And you have Ryunya Yamanaka from Japan. Okay? And he just recently became champion. So 2 champions this year, 1 from last year and 1 from 3 years ago. So it's very intriguing. They're smaller guys. Their records can be inflated sometimes because, you know, it is what it is. But I wanted to talk about these current world champions. But we also have more promise. Usually people don't cover this, but I want to talk about the boxing women as well. The heavyweight champion currently right now is Alejandra Jimenez. She's 9-0-0, so she's undefeated. She was champion since March of 2016, so it was a little turnover there. In the super middleweight division, Clarissa Shields right now commands it with four fights. She's already world champion, but that's again mainly because these divisions kind of don't have a lot of top tier people. She's the WC and IBF world champion. The WBA and WBO is kind of vacant, and that's the only problem with women's boxing. It's kind of hard to find certain weight classes, but other weight classes, you know, you can get a lot of fighters. I guess it's because of the dimensions of women and the women who are interested in going to the sport of boxing as well. In the middleweight division, the undisputed champion, okay, she's not undisputed champion, but I mean the available champion with the championship belts are Christina Hammer. She's from Germany, and she has the WBC and WBO championship belt, okay? And she's 21 fights, 1 draw. So that's pretty good. She's been WBO champion since 2010. She recently became the WBC champion last year. Okay, and Clarissa Shields was recently a world champion this year. In the super welterweight division, we talk about Hannah Gabrielis. She's from Costa Rica, and she's the WBA and WBO champion. She was the WBA champion in 2016, WBO champion in 2014. But in this division, we have other champions. We have Chris Numas from Uruguay. She became champion this year, the IBF world champion. And we have Iwa Pietowska from Poland, and she was last year, September, she was the WBC champion. Sometimes you get turnover with these things, right? All right, and then you look at the welterweight division, and that's dominated by Cecilia Brækhus. She's been fighting mostly in Norway. The earliest she became world champion, she was the WBA, WBC world champion in 2009. So she's been doing this for 8 years. She became the IBF world champion in 2014, and in 2010 she was the WBO champion. She's been doing a lot of defenses since then. She's undefeated as well, 31-0-0-0. So that's pretty cool. So keep an eye on her. She's the real deal. Then you have here the super lightweight division, or junior welterweight. In this division, Anna Laura Eshtek is really the person to look for in the division. She's the WBA, IBF, and WBO champion. However, Erica Annabella Farias, she won the WBC world title in 2014, which is about 3 years ago. And she's been fighting in Argentina ever since. So it's really an interesting little mix here. We have Argentinians here. Ana Laura Eshtek. Maybe she can face Erica Annabelle Farias. And so that should be interesting to see who would win that fight in the end. In the lightweight division, we're looking at Annie Esther Sanchez. She's from Argentina as well. And she won that just recently. I mean, a couple of days ago, about 3 days ago, September 9th, 2017. The championship turned hands. However, Delphine Persoon from Belgium, she's been world champion since 2014. Victoria Nuella Bustos, been world champion since 2013. So it'd be interesting to see Bustos face Sanchez. That would be good. As well as you have Johanna Belen Alfonso, again from Argentina. Argentina sweeping everything almost here. She was the WBO champion since 2015. Why does Bustos not face Alfonso? I don't know. Why hasn't these guys fought each other? I don't know. I don't know if they did, or it's just switching over hands or something. I don't know. But they should. In the super featherweight division, we're looking at Hyun Mi Choi from South Korea. That's the WBA champion. Eva Wallström from Finland. She is the WBC world champion, and she is undefeated so far since 2015. The problem with these guys is probably they never leave their country, so because they have the boxing advantage, the crowd, the showings for that. But sometimes they need to either leave their country or go to a neutral event and face one another. Of course, then we have all these different boxing associations, so it's kind of hard to just sometimes you're busy defending or whatever. But it'd be nice to see them, match up with each other and just to see the women's boxing rise up from the ashes. It's still in the doldrums. And I guess it's because we don't have enough women personalities. We have a lot of good boxers, but we don't have enough personality. And you got to speak English to get on the big stage. To have, event held in Las Vegas or event held in New York, This is the Mecca's places where you get attention, or somewhere in London, filling up a stadium. So this is the kind of problems we have with women's boxing. We don't have really personalities a lot or some kind of catch phrase, but we'll see how it goes. We got Cecilia Bacchus, and we of course have the young Olympian who has already become world champion in Clarissa Shields. So we'll see what happens. But you got to have personality out here. You can't just be sitting down depending on your skills. You have to be outspoken. You have to put yourself out there. You know what I'm saying? All right, in the featherweight division, we have Jelena Mrdjenovic from Canada. She's been world champion since last year, the WBA world champion, and also the WBC world champion, which she won at the same time last year. We also have Marcela Eliana Acuna, who is the Argentinian world champion. And, she's got a lot of experience. She became world champion 2 months after Jelena Mrdjenovic. And we got Jennifer Han of the United States. She's been world champion since 2015. And she's the IBF world champion, so she's probably defended her title a couple times. And then Cindy Serrano, she's been world champion, WBO world champion since December 10th of last year, the end of last year. So the featherweight division, again, seems to have enough women to, do something there. She's been in Puerto Rico. But again, to make this stuff really exciting, to make the fans want to come and be interested in women's boxing, I think a couple things need to be done. One, you need to have personality. You need to put yourself out there. You need to be outspoken a bit. And so whenever they interview you, they want to interview you again because you're so interesting. See, what makes superstars are people who are interesting. Layla Ali, she was always interesting. And the way how she talked like her dad. So she was very interesting. Ann Wolf, she was a killer in the ring and everything, but she was still in the shadow of Layla Ali. Nobody knows Ann Wolf like that. But a lot of people know Layla Ali because of the name. And then she behaved like her dad. She was like, I'm going to beat you when we get in there, She trash talk a lot. So you have to have personality. And then Layla Ali is just beautiful. And then she had this, she's big and she's massive and she's strong, but yet she's beautiful and she's a woman, right? So I'm trying to explain to you people, you gotta put your, you can't, to be a superstar, you can't just depend on your skills, right? Oscar De La Hoya had to smile, he beamed, he talked, but in this day and age with social media, you gotta separate yourself from the rest of the fighters. There's a lot of fighters who can fight, but that's not enough. That's why Sean Porter is separated from the rest because of his dad. Kenny Porter speaks, he's outspoken. Danny Garcia, he's separated from the rest because of his dad. His dad's outspoken. Floyd's the mouthpiece for Gervonta Davis, Tank, And you have to understand, you have to be outspoken. Adrian Broner, he's outspoken. You don't have to be negative. You don't have to promote negative things to be outspoken. Yes, a lot of times, sometimes Floyd was pretty negative with certain trash talking things. You don't have to be that way. You can be like a Keith Thurman. You can be, Andre Ward. The problem with Andre Ward is, again, he has the potential to be a superstar, but he needs to talk more. He needs to be a little bit more outspoken, and that doesn't mean that he has to be a negative person. You understand what I'm saying? But you got to put People need to know more about your personality. Who are you, Andre Ward? We know you as a boxer. We know you're very proper and everything, and you're a godly guy. But we need to know more about you. You need to have a personality that people can say, oh, that's what I mean by personality. People get interested and people become superstars because they have some kind of personality with them. You see what I'm saying? And that's the thing that Andre Ward doesn't have that makes people not always interested in him. I love his boxing, but you got to have something more than just boxing. You know what I'm saying? Floyd Mayweather, he had something extra than boxing. And love him or hate him, like him or not, you're gonna watch him every time you see him. Because there's something about, he puts himself out there. And Andre Ward has to put himself out there. I know he's careful about putting himself out there, and I understand why. Because what comes with putting yourself out there as an entertainer is people, now you're susceptible to everything. You're susceptible to people attacking you. That's why some people say Andre Ward's aloof. It's not that he's aloof. It's just that he's very private with certain things. Protective of certain things. But if you want to be a superstar now, you got to put it all out there. That is at least aspects of yourself. You have to put the aspects of yourself clearly out there. We only know Andre Ward as a boxer. Keith Thurman put himself out there. We know he's a guy who likes nature. We know he plays the flute. We know he's an intellectual. We know Keith Thurman put himself out there. He wasn't about to hide certain aspects of himself. Even let bits of his family and his family life be known. You know, and you have to do that because you mustn't be ashamed and you mustn't hide everything. And if it's about God, put God out there. If you're a godly guy, I know you might look like a hypocrite if you come across a different way. But if it's God, look at Manny Pacquiao, put God out there, and he looks like a hypocrite sometimes, but that's what Manny Pacquiao is. You know, at first what he put out there was, he was this killer and he was womanizing and stuff, and then he changed it around and he puts God out there now. And you can do that. I mean, put it out there. You got to put it out there for people. And it's hard because, with entertainment, you got to have a thick skin, because when you put that out there, now you can't control how people respond to that. You see what I'm saying? But that's part of what comes with the territory. So that's what Floyd did. He didn't try to be the villain. Everybody says Floyd wanted to be the villain. I never thought Floyd tried to be the villain. He just put himself out there, and then he sort of amplified it at certain points in time, especially when he's trash talking. He goes to the nth degree. But he put it out there. That's all Floyd did. And he realized, this is what I am. This is how I am. I really am this, and I'm not pretending to be this. I'm flamboyant. I'm flashy. I'm a guy who, is very expressive. I'm going to put myself out there. And some people will like me and some people won't. And even the people who like me, there's going to be things about me that they're not going to like. But I'm going to put out me and stay true to that. So that's what he did. Now, you don't have to do it like that. In other words, you don't have to put out the way how he did it. You don't have to copy what he does, but you should put out whatever it is that you are. Like, for instance, me. I'm putting out these videos. I'm putting out myself out there. The lashback could be horrible. Somebody could take this video now of this point in my life and use it back against me later on in my life. But you have to put yourself out there. You have to take that risk and say, look, this is who I was, or this is who I am now. And maybe who I am now will be different to who I am later on. But once I stay true to myself and I put myself out there later on, then it's okay, because people evolve, people grow. As Oscar De La Hoya said, yeah, you guys saw me at a certain time. I was sniffing coke and I was in a fishnet and stuff. That's a part of who I was. I'm not going to lie. That's a part of who I was. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I stay that way. Everybody's got a past. So he's right in that respect as well. Sometimes putting yourself out there, though it may have huge lashback, guess what? You think you're different to everybody else in the world? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. There are people who do worse than you did. But people are hypocrites. They're quick to point the finger. You know what I'm saying? So once you know that, we're living in a world. Yes, it can have a consequence. So maybe you don't get an opportunity or you don't get a job because you put yourself out there a certain way. Like the sports guy who talked, he protested about, the racism and stuff, right? But you have to put yourself out there. Because let me tell you something. If you suppress that, if you suppress the sides, the different sides of yourself, you see, you have to be genuine. You have to be... People appreciate someone who's transparent about themselves, who's being honest about themselves. That's why I don't... If somebody tells me they came out the closet and they're gay, and they're being honest with themselves about that, I'm like, that's okay. That's cool. At least you know that. It doesn't mean that I agree with you being gay, but at least you're honest with yourself about that. And we can go from there. And I'm not saying that I'm a hater of gay people, because I'm not a hater of anybody. I don't hate anybody. Doesn't mean that that's the way how I condone gayness. You understand what I'm saying? There's things that Floyd does, for instance. Or there's things that Adrian Broner does, right? That I completely don't agree with, right? But I'm glad that they're at least being honest with themselves and portraying themselves as they are, than being fake about it and covering it up and making people believe that they are something else. That's at least one step in the right direction. You get what I'm saying? So when you put yourself out there, that's a good thing. Now, when you put yourself out there, you're liable to lash back and all these things. But the other thing that's good about it is this. You put yourself out there, and in time, when you grow and mature as a person, you realize that while you need to be honest with yourself, you must aspire to be better than you were the day before. And it's the aspiration to be better. It's the aspiration to be better that causes you to say, nah, this is not effective, and that is not effective, and this is damaging, and this is... You understand what I'm saying? Because you get responsibility and you grow as a person. So sometimes the criticism you get is actually good criticism. And sometimes you get useful criticism, and you get to, because you put yourself out there, you get to learn, so you don't do those things anymore, and you change as a person. So all I'm saying is, as people, because we're all people, and we're not... And I don't know any of us who have lived an absolutely perfect life. We make mistakes, right? I'm not saying that it's good to make mistakes. I'm not saying that you will make another mistake, or that guarantees that you make mistakes and you will always make mistakes in your life, and it's good to be human is to make mistakes. I'm not saying none of those things. But I am saying, because we're human beings, all of us, we cannot hold all of us to this extremely high standard, which is hypocritical of all of us, to say, oh, because someone did not reach that standard or did something that was wrong, that we're going to come down on that person to compensate for all wrongdoings that we did. You get what I'm saying? I'm just being deep here. But anyway, we're talking about weight classes, and I went off on a tangent. But the thing that a lot of athletes need to do is find their niche. The thing about the WWE that boxing can pull from, and you can't fake this now, folks, is the personalities. And in boxing, for boxing to flourish and do very well, and even MMA, even though MMA has some personalities in them, is you have to find out what is your personality, what makes you unique, and go with that. And it's fun, because when you do that in boxing, now you have all these different personalities in there. You may have a pacifist in there. Adrian Broner is called the clown or the Joker. He's funny. And he's always been funny. That's always been Adrian Broner. Adrian Broner's always been a fun-loving kind of dude. So Adrian Broner brings this sort of personality, which some people gravitate towards and like, and some people don't like. And he had all his little, he had his own little lines that he would say. Keith Thurman's his own personality. Sean Porter and his dad, Sean Porter's like the pit bull, his father's like the guy with the leash. They're interesting. Personality. You gotta have it, man, folks. It's entertainment. So you need more than just guys going in the ring and box. Okay? And it's great to watch boxing matches. The other thing that's interesting, Paulie Malignaggi. Paulie Malignaggi wouldn't be where he is today, and people wouldn't know about him if it wasn't for his mouth. Okay, Paulie can knock out a fly, right? Well, we think so at least. He did knock out a couple people, and when it mattered. But the point is, Paulie's mouth got him to where he is. And he really does know boxing, which is what makes it so much more interesting. Okay? And all I'm saying is, personality is important in boxing. Of course, you better know how to box and you better be dedicated to boxing. But personality is important in boxing, right? All right, so I think that would kind of help. And you can't be fake with it. Like, if you're just a quiet person, then you can't be outspoken. It just doesn't work. You have to find somebody associated with you to be outspoken on your behalf. Like Danny Garcia. Danny Garcia is not really a heavily outspoken guy. He's like a about his business kind of guy. And his father, even though his father reflects his sentiments, his father's more the outspoken guy. You understand what I'm saying? So you got to find somebody to be a mouthpiece for you or something. You know what I'm saying? And you don't have to be negative about it. You can be positive about it. Look at the WWE. You had different people who were positive, and you had all kinds of different personalities. I remember back in the 80s, the late 70s, which I grew up in, that music had personality. You had all kinds of different kinds of creative forms of music, and I guess some people in the 60s would know about that even more. And being your own individual was one of the things that was kind of the thing of the time. And then in the 80s, it became trendy to be in certain trends and stuff like that and so on, right? So for me, I grew up mostly in the 80s and the 90s, even though I was born in the 70s. But I really like the 70s style. My thing is the 70s, okay? But nonetheless, being an individual and being sort of independent was always important. And in boxing, even I would advise Gervonta Davis, know yourself. Yeah, you got a mentor, but the mentor is just the guide. Adrian Broner, know yourself. If you're going to work with this mentor, he's just one, but you're the guy that's supposed to guide yourself along. But the mentors, not you're the guy, but you're the person to direct your vessel. But the mentor, he's trying to help you make the best possible choice based on what he's done in his career. So you must know what mentor is for what. And as a boxer, you have to know what works for you. And that's what I try to explain to people. Like, it's up to you. You're the only person who can direct your career and your own life. But there are people who are in certain positions who can help you to make the best possible positions, the best possible decisions. All right, let's go into the other weight classes. We have super bantamweight. So super bantamweight or junior featherweight. And in this division, we have Alice Sanchez. She's from Venezuela. You have Fatuma Zakira. She's from Kenya. I've never seen a Kenyan boxer who's a world champion, so that's really awesome. I need to go check her out. We have Marcela Eliana Acuna. She was world champion from Argentina. You know the Argentinians run things. In December of last year, she was world champion. And Amanda Serrano. You know Amanda Serrano from Puerto Rico. She's world champion, WBO champion. So that's really cool. She's pretty nice to watch, actually. Amanda Serrano. And then we have in the bantamweight division, because they get smaller and smaller, we have the WBA champion. WBA champion is Marilyn Rivas, and we have Mariana Juarez, and we have Maria Cecilia Roman. Okay, those are the guys. In the super flyweight division, we have Linda Laura Leca, Guadalupe Martinez Guzman, that's interesting. Deborah Anahi Dioncios from Argentina. She's the IBF, and then we have Daniela Romina Bermudez, who's the WBO champion, both from Argentina. And we only have one undefeated champion right now, and she's been champion since 2012, 25-0-0. So that's pretty remarkable. We have a relatively new champion this year in Guadalupe Martinez Guzman. In the flyweight division, we have Naoko Fujioka. Naoko Fujioka. She's from Japan. You know the lower weight classes, we see Japan appear a little bit more often. We have Jessica Chavez from Mexico, the WBC champion. The IBF champion is Leonela Paola Yudica from Argentina. And we have Montserrat Alarcon from Mexico, the WBO champion. So, and two of them have recently become world champions this year, and the other two have been world champions for 2 to 3 years, which is pretty good. Well, almost 2 to 3 years. The light flyweight champions, we are looking at Jessica Yolanda Bop from Argentina. No surprise, she's been world champion since 2009, ladies and gentlemen. That's impressive. Then we have Esmeralda Moreno from Mexico. She's the WBC world champion. She was world champion this year, as well as Kenya Enriquez, who was world champion this year as well. Alondra Garcia was world champion this year, and Sun Young Hong from South Korea was world champion this year. So there's been a lot of turnover going on in those lower weight classes. And we got the minimum division, and we also have the light minimum division. So the first time we're seeing for the women's division, we've seen the light minimum division. We never heard about that. We knew about, that's really small. So let's talk about the minimum division first. We have Anabel Ortiz from Mexico. She's the WBA champion since 2013. She's been champion for four years. And then you got Yuku Koruki from Japan. She's been world champion for 3 years. And then we got Zong Ju Kai, who's been a world champion this year. So there's been a turnover somewhere there. And the WBO champion this year is Kayoko Ebata. All right, we actually got a Chinese world champion, so that's pretty cool. And you got the light minimum weight, or atom weight, or junior mini flyweight. This is the smallest division of them all. These people are 102 pounds. They're really small. And Yokunoko Furukawa was world champion last year, as well as Maria Milano. And then the WBC world champion was Momo Koshikai from Japan in 2008, which means she's been world champion now for 9 years. Wow, that's crazy. But probably just mostly fighting in Japan, I guess. Then the IBF world champion comes from Costa Rica. She is Yocasta Valle. That's last year she became world champion, so that turned over. And then you have Nyle Ichiyama from Japan. She's been world champion since 2014 for 3 years. So sometimes what happens is, they're world champions for that long because they're facing competition in their country and nobody else wants to face the competition with them. So, but then again, there's such a small weight class. Like, that's really small guys, So anyway, I wanted to share not just the current world champions in terms of men, but always give a fair shake. We also have women world champions, and I wanted to talk about all the promise that's behind it. But again, I've emphasized this more than enough. Personality is important when you're doing boxing or any kind of sport, but you can, of course, you can't just focus on personality. You got to do your job. You got to, be able to do something in the ring. But it's also important to put your personality out there. And once you can fight very well, it's not always about winning, even though winning is very important in boxing or any sport. You want to win. You don't go in a competition to say, I put on a good fight, but I lost or I drew. Nobody wants to draw, nobody wants to lose. You don't go into competition for that, okay? Of course, winning is important. But even if you don't win, your personality in the ring and kind of fights you do and how entertaining those fights are and how competitive those fights are really drive your ratings. And also drive, as people like to talk about, your worth, okay? Your bankability. So, your stock, as they say. So it's very important to think about those things. Josecito Lopez, for instance, he's a BC level fighter, but he puts on exciting fights. He's always in an exciting fight, and he's been doing it for a while. And so those kinds of things also help his stock. All right, guys. So I just wanted to do that. This is an extensive video. If you guys reached to the end of the video, great. Don't forget you can donate, subscribe. By all means, donate, subscribe to my channel as well as if you can. Share my videos, comment on them. I really just try to better people in boxing. There are a couple other channels I want to talk about. Eric Bradley's Master Boxing. If you guys haven't checked it out, check out that channel. It's a great channel. Also, you have Barry Robinson's channel. If you don't know Barry Robinson's channel, I'll leave the link in the link section below. He's great at breaking down fights. You got a Mayweather boxing channel. That's a staple for me because I'm a Mayweather boxing. I'm really a serious breakdown. I like to look at analyze Mayweather because of how he accomplished 50-0 is something that. Okay, so yeah, the last 2 fights were not as high caliber as the almost how many years? About 9-10 years of fighting that he had, right? But nonetheless, there are still fights on his resume, and the truth be told, this dude has been opening up doors for other boxers coming later, the future, which we were just been talking about, the future of boxing, which these guys are the future of boxing. And let me say something. Regardless of what happens with Canelo versus Golovkin, let's say, for instance, Golovkin loses the fight to Canelo. So what? Golovkin still, he's now made his name, and depending on how well that fight goes, his stock will go up, not down. Let's say Canelo loses to Golovkin, right? Let's say Canelo loses to Golovkin. All right, depending on the fight, his stock will go up, not down. And the other thing is, these guys always have other guys in the division to face. So even if either of them lose a fight, and this fight is going to be a pretty big pay-per-view. I know it's going to at least make over 1 million pay-per-view buys. If it makes 2 million pay-per-view buys, that would be great. I don't think it will, but even so, it's going to be a great fight. All right, no doubt about it. But the point I'm making is, you can see that because Mayweather's opened these doors for the possibility of how much money you can make in pay-per-view now, and pay-per-view is not going to be as regular as it used to be, it leads to these kinds of events being bigger and bigger events. When pay-per-view was just so common, they were just having pay-per-view after pay-per-view after pay. It made it too common, especially in this kind of economy. Now, if you can have 1 to 2 pay-per-view events every year, just 1 to 2 pay-per-view events, and you have a whole bunch of other fights and a lot of free fights, as we have with PBC, and a lot of free fights on ESPN and so on, that helps with the boxing, with people getting tuned into boxing. And another thing, it helped MMA as well. Floyd Mayweather opened the door to MMA crossovers, boxing crossovers. People open to the idea of a crossover fight, you know. And the nice thing about this is Conor did not perform bad. He didn't perform bad. Remember, he's debuting as a professional boxer. He did not perform bad at all. And Floyd got the result he was supposed to get. And Conor showed that he could be tricky. He had more than just what people thought. He was going to come out and just scrap or just be an MMA artist. No, he actually boxed, and boxed decently. I mean, for a debut, going 12 rounds? Are you serious? You know, he did well. He did well. Say what you want about him. He did well. And so the purists will tell you, and even maybe even Floyd would tell you that, you know, if he went in there and got him out of there really quickly, then people would have felt robbed about this matchup. But the truth be told, I don't think Floyd would have gone in there and tried to get him out quickly anyway. So I don't feel, I still don't believe that Floyd carried Conor McGregor. I don't believe he carried him for the first 4 rounds. I saw Floyd turn it on in the 4th round, and I never saw Floyd really ease up on Conor. I saw him putting pressure on Conor straight through, and he got him out of there in the 10th round. Okay, could he have got him out of there earlier? I'm pretty sure he could have, and he said so. He probably could have got him out in there in 7 or 8 rounds, or even 9 rounds. But the point is, he got him out of there in 10 rounds, right? And I thought Conor put up a great showing for himself. I don't care what nobody says. But I thought also Floyd, at 40 years old, put on a really great performance. We saw him do something that he doesn't normally do. And why I say it's a great performance is because a lot of people really enjoyed it. And then a lot of people saw how much harder Floyd was punching than Conor was. And so it made people say, oh, I remember my brother, who doesn't know anything about boxing, right? My brother was saying, man, he's like a snake. He just was zapping the dude. And I enjoyed that, because that's why it's a great performance. See, great performance has nothing to do with your boxing skills. It has to do with if people felt impressed, especially people who don't know nothing about boxing. See, Floyd put on a great performance against Manny Pacquiao, but the audience thought it was boring, and they thought it wasn't a great performance. They thought both Pacquiao and Floyd put on a poor performance because they were expecting a bloodbath. When Floyd fought Conor, people will say, who don't know boxing, that he put on a great performance. Now, the people who know boxing know that wasn't great, but it was necessary. It was what was necessary to put down Conor. You know what I'm saying? It's not the typical Floyd performance. So you can't say that Floyd lost or won. In my opinion, speaking as a casual, he put on a great performance. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, guys, leave your comments in the comment section below. Don't forget you can donate to my channel. The more you donate is the more I can really put out some really good videos for you guys. Don't forget me with donations. You notice I emphasize that quite a lot. You guys have a great one.